Hey everyone, what's doing? This is Mitch Goldberg with Be the Boss of Your Money. You're watching my live stream. We're going to do something a little different today. We're not going to do our usual stock market update. We're getting right into the meat of the matter, the heart of the matter. I've got a very special guest. His name is Adam Posner. He's a founder and managing director of NHP Talent. He is the host of the of the podcast called the POZcast. He's a real good guy. I actually met him at a LinkedIn local. He was one of the speakers. I was very impressed. We became friends on LinkedIn, and now he's actually graced me with his presence. He's going to be my guest. We're going to talk about a lot of things. We're going to do a quick lightning round. I didn't even tell him about this at the very end, so you're going to want to stick around. So let's just roll a real quick intro, and then we're going to get right into the heart of what we're here for. This is going to be good. Hey, Adam, how are you?
Mitch, my man, thank you so much for having me on. I am doing well. Yourself?
It is great to have you here. I'm going to put on my live stream voice right now. Everyone, welcome.
We changed our voice,
Posner
right?
of the POZcast. Adam's a special person because in my little world, he is one of the few successful podcasters who I know. He's homegrown. He's a Long Island boy like myself.
That's right, Long Beach.
Yeah. I'd say the big difference is you went to SUNY Buffalo and I went to SUNY Albany.
You're a little bit closer, to home.
Yeah, so we're both like products of the SUNY system. So you have graced me with your presence. I really appreciate it. I'm really impressed with what you do. You put out a ton of great content. So everybody, I know Adam, he's a great guy. If you do not follow him on LinkedIn, you should definitely connect with him. He is putting out great content, very educational, and it's high value ticket stuff. So I want to ask you a couple of questions. Okay. First, tell us a little bit about yourself, NHP, POZcast, et cetera. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Mitch, again, thanks so much for having me on. I am Adam Posner. People get confused with the Poz. Poz was actually my nickname growing up, so it was a logical name when it came up with the podcast. But I'm a New York guy through and through. Lived here my whole entire life. First 15 years of my career working in advertising and marketing. And then about 5 years ago, I just wasn't enjoying it. And I pivoted into the world of recruiting, which I do now. And I own my own boutique staffing firm, NHP Talent Group, specializing in all things digital marketing. I worked with startups, I work with brands, and we're a consultancy. So we come in and we are an extension of a company's current or lack thereof talent acquisition team, and we help them scale and find the best talent for their organization.
That's a mouthful. You do it all.
I do it all.
You find quality people in the digital agency, media, advertising space. Okay, make sure I understand that right.
Exactly.
And tell me, what does NHP stand for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when it came time to name my company, I was sitting there with my wife and I'm throwing around all these cliche terms: rocket talent, speed, let's hire everybody, talent group. And I said, I can't think of anything, right? I'm a creative guy, but I couldn't think of anything. And my wife said to me, she goes, Adam, what is the most important thing in the world to you? And at the time, it was before my son was born. And I said, it's my daughter, Nina. And she said, well, why don't you name the company after her? So NHP is Nina Harrison Posner. I know every time I look at my logo, every time I look at my email, every time I look at the hat that I'm usually wearing, you're lucky because I got a haircut yesterday, but I usually wear my NHP Talent Group hat. And every time I look at it, Mitch, it reminds me of my why. It reminds me of my North Star, and it keeps everything that I do in focus.
That's great. You need your why in focus, because business could be a grind and you are an entrepreneur and you're doing it yourself. You don't have anybody telling you, this is what I think you should do next. This is what I think you're doing wrong. This is what I think you're doing right. It's just up to you to keep it moving.
Yeah, it's tough. Right? It's tough. You have to hold yourself accountable.
That's right. What about the POZcast? Tell me how you started that. And were you, before you answer that, were you creating content before you came up with the POZcast?
That's a good question. I was creating text-based content, posting the occasional quote, the occasional image on there, but it wasn't until the show was created and the show itself generated so much content. But the show was born on this idea of me knowing that I have an incredible network and I wanted to shine a light on it. I wanted to showcase all the amazing people in my world, the world of talent acquisition. I said, you know what? I can't play guitar, I can't sing, I can't draw, but I think I could be a good host. And almost 100 episodes in, the rest is history.
That's amazing. 100 episodes in.
It's crazy.
Are you going to have like a centennial celebration when you hit 100?
Yeah, I mean, we're working on it. I'm in the process now of booking my big 100th guest. Either him or her is going to be a big one, and hopefully there'll be bells and whistles to go along with it. Maybe a parade if we're able to do that again.
A parade. Okay, yeah, if we could maybe just wear
right down Sunrise Highway. Yeah, exactly.
All right, so that's it. That's all I got. I want to thank you for. Okay, now, real seriously, though, okay.
That was easy. Glad I stuck around.
That was pretty. So, how glad are you? How amazingly happy, glad that you are that you started creating content before this pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And, I had those tools from working 15 years in advertising and marketing and working under Gary Vee and really understanding his content model, the content pyramid of being able to take a singular piece of content and turn it into, multiple 10, 15.
Okay.
Even
just trying to steal your thunder. You see this?
There it is.
This is a content pyramid that I'm going to be talking to people on a Zoom call in a little while.
Yeah, absolutely. I knew how to do that. So I was ahead of the game. The other piece too, right? It's one thing to create. We could take this recording right now. We could take the video from it and you could just put it out there. But it's another thing to take it, turn it into clips, turn it into video clips, turn it into audio clips.
I made this digestible for Twitter.
The word is repurpose, everybody. He's holding it up. It's called repurpose. But that skill set comes with a discipline too. You have to have a process in place. You have to have a system. Otherwise, you will go absolutely insane. If every piece of content, you're all over the place, you don't know where it is. So I always advise people come up with a process and be laser focused and disciplined in your content creation. It'll make life a lot easier.
So by the way, folks, if you're out there watching this in the live stream, I would like to welcome you. You are watching Adam Posner.
There you go.
And myself. My live stream is called Be the Boss of Your Money.
Hi, Lila.
Hi, Lila. If you have any questions, I would love to hear from you. I know that Adam would love to hear from you. And since he's the guest, he would love to hear from you more, okay? It would be better for him. I see a couple of comments out there, so we're going to get to your comments. Stick around. So hopefully you've got some good questions, some zingers, and maybe
bring it.
Throw a curveball at Adam, although I don't know if that's really possible.
I'm more of a knuckleball hitter. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and a little bit of a knuckleball hitter. Okay.
It's baseball season.
It's for the professions that you work with. I mean, are you just working with recruiters or agencies or video companies? Like, can you narrow it down? Because even though in your world that's like a big thing, agency businesses, and I kind of know what that is just because of the people
I'll
I follow.
Explain it. Yeah, I'll break it down. So I operate in the advertising, media, digital marketing space. So I work with brands, right? And those brands have marketing departments and they have social media teams and they have different jobs within that. They have product, digital product, physical product teams, account management strategy. Those are all the roles I focus on. So when I say agencies, these are agencies in the digital marketing, advertising, and media space.
All right. Thank you. So what's changed for you and for NHP since the pandemic?
Yeah, that's a great question.
What's changed for your industry also?
Absolutely. So we'll start with the industry. I mean, every industry is hit differently, but it really depends on the vertical. So the advertising industry has been decimated in so many ways, really based on the vertical and the sector. For example, if you're an ad agency and your clients are in the hospitality, travel, tourism, sports space, those are all industries that are absolutely destroyed right now. So unfortunately, the folks that work in those fields that cover the account management, the strategy, and the creative, a lot of them have lost their jobs. However, if we shift sectors and talk about what's in demand right now, whether it be pharmaceutical, whether it be fast-moving consumer goods, consumer packaged products, right? Anything that you're buying, anything that you're shipping, anything that's direct to consumer or subscription-based, they're hiring right now. Right. And that's where I decided to focus and shift my focus and work with those specific companies. And I've seen my business personally pick up. So it's been, being on the offensive mindset instead of being defensive. And the keyword, Mitch, that I've been talking to everybody about, let's say you're in an industry that's really struggling right now. The word is invaluable. Right? How do you stay top of mind with your clients, your partners, and your vendors?
Toma, top of mind awareness. This is what I'm talking about to people on Zoom in a little while.
Be invaluable, right? Be providing, white papers, looking out for their blind spots, providing strategy, doing a SWOT analysis of their social media. You may not be asking directly for the sale, but when that time comes and the door opens, you'll be top of mind.
The way I say it is I create a lot of content and it's just giving value, give value, give value. And after
100%.
I'm finished giving value, I give more value.
Keep it going.
And the idea is when somebody is ready to switch to a new financial advisor, if they're dissatisfied with their current service provider, people typically will call the first person they think of.
Yep.
That's my job, to be the first person you think of.
Well, how many people are doing this in your space, Mitch, right? Like how many financial advisors are out there with a live stream? I mean, you're doing a great job creating a ton of content, branding yourself, right?
There's not a lot. I don't really know of any. There are a few people around the country. There's one in Florida who's doing a great job. There were a few, but
we don't want to let the secret out.
Yeah, but not. Yeah, we don't want to let the secret. Although I'll be doing that later on. But listen. Like everything else, you can tell everybody how great a podcast is and how wonderful it is and how to start it. How many people are really going to do it?
Yeah, and we look at the success ratio, and I think there was some kind of crazy stat that like 50 or 60% of all podcasts don't make it past I think 10 episodes, because people don't realize how much actual work goes into putting out a podcast every single week. And it's one of those things too, where everybody thinks they can do it. And I think everyone should try to do it if you have an itch for it, to see if you actually, could put it out there, because it's quite the journey. And it's a real test to see, can I get in front of that camera? Can I get on the microphone? Could I hold that conversation? Could I format the show? And can I keep people's interest and get them hooked on the next episode?
It's hard. Everybody starts with these things like they're going to talk about what they're going to do, what they're going to talk about, how excited they are. They talk about their equipment. But after like the first or second episode, they're like, wait a minute, now I have to do real homework.
I actually have to do research on my guests. Yeah.
You have to do the research. And you might think you know things, but if you're going to go out there and say it in public, you better know it. You have to be specific.
You'll be fact checked. Believe me, I've been grilled, I've been trolled, and I've learned lessons the hard way that you have to do your homework on the guests. Because it's also, you're paying a complete disservice to your guests. And as my show is built up, and the caliber of guests and the notoriety of them, and the audience has grown, I owe it to my guests and I owe it to my audience to do the homework and do the research. Because that makes for a good show, makes for a much better show.
And everybody's taking their time. If you're not making the time worthwhile for people, you're right. It's an insult to people.
And there's nothing worse. I've been guests on show where, they have not done any of their research, and you're like, come on, man, like I'm putting in my time. My time's valuable. I want to put on a good show for your audience. The least you could do is do a little bit of research.
That's right. Look, do you, at this point, like I know you more as the POZcast than I do NHP. At this point, has one become more important than the other, or is the POZcast really the feeder to NHP? Or do you separate them now as you have two different businesses? I know the POZcast takes the same amount of time as a business, but go ahead.
No, it's different, and that's a fantastic question. So I'm gonna admit something here. So when I launched the show as a marketer, I committed a fatal error. I did not directly connect my business and the podcast, and they went off in two separate directions. And now that I'm approaching episode 100, I am now bringing the two properties back together. So the POZcast is going to be fully powered by NHP Talent Group. So that just isn't just the branding and the creative and everything goes into it, but it's going to be much more aligned with my messaging and the business strategy. So a little sneak preview of what's about to come after episode 100. It's going to be a much more laser focused show that's going to be driving business more directly back to NHP Talent Group.
Okay. Hence the hat.
Yeah, which I'm usually wearing, but I'm not today because I got a nice haircut. I wanted to show it off to you, Mitch.
If I had a nice hair, just forget the haircut. If I had what you have, I wouldn't wear a hat ever. So
it's a blessing and a curse, man. It's a lot of work.
How much gel? How many ounces of gel does it take to mat that thing down?
Well, Mitch, the word is product these days. We like to use
product.
The word product. How much product?
Product.
It's a 2-finger little dip.
Okay. I heard you have more hair product than a drugstore, but that's just the rumor going around. Okay,
one little jar.
Okay. So I was going to ask you how you what do you plan to do to keep growing the podcast? Because look, like you were saying, people don't realize how much effort goes into making a show. But what do you do now to grow it? You have a lot of viewers and you have a big LinkedIn presence. And I know they all tie together. Everything helps feed everything else. But what do you do to grow the podcast?
Yeah, and it comes down to engagement. And again, this is a mistake I made early on. I knew this, right? It's the old analogy of the plumber with the broken toilet, right? Like I knew everything I needed to do. I did not do a good enough job early on in the show with building a community. right? And I paid for it. And, you know, I had to kind of backtrack and really work on that one-to-one engagement with every single listener, every single fan, everybody that engaged with it to really build that attachment, and then putting in the work now, and now it's paying off. And I go back and I said, if I did that from the beginning, I would have exponentially more growth. And it's really interesting to see there's some really smart people out there that have spent the time first to build a huge community before launching their podcast, and it really helps them launch a lot quicker. But back when I launched my podcast, I said, screw it, I'm just going to do it, right? So two different schools of thought there, right? One of them is just go ahead and do it once you have the impetus and the urge. And then the other side of it is to really be much more strategic and build that community online first, hype it up, and then launch your show.
Well, I admire the fact that you decided to just go for it. You just did it. And people talk about doing these things. I know people are talking about starting something. It's like, I'm like, you first told me about that idea like 3 years ago. You're still. I don't want to hear it anymore. Either do it or don't. I'm tired of hearing about it. What advice? Well, you already just gave really, really good content.
Yeah,
really
that's based on real life, man. I wish I started that before.
When you work with a company who hires you to recruit, what do you tell them? Like, if I'm a digital agency and I want to hire a certain, an employee for a certain role, what advice are you going to give me to bring in the right person?
Absolutely. The first conversation I have with any client is I want to make sure a couple things. One, how serious they are to make this hire. Is this an immediate hire? Because the last thing I want to do is start engaging candidates, especially now in this economy. You don't want to get people's hopes up and then you go back to a company that's not ready to pull the trigger. Right. So I think that's absolutely the most critical thing. Second, I really want to understand that company's values. And we're not talking about values aren't ping pong tables and cold brew on tap. Right. That's BS. Right. I really want to understand, what do they value? What are their core pillars of culture? Because I want to be able to
the four pillars of culture.
Right. I want to be able to articulate that back to any candidate, because ultimately I'm an ambassador of the company that I am recruiting for. Right. And I'm putting my name on the line. I'm representing that company. I want to make sure that they practice what they preach and they say what they do and they do what they say.
Well, you want to have a successful marriage, of everybody, because, if people start complaining and it becomes a problem. All right. I want to show you something. This is on your right on your LinkedIn profile. OK. And I think this is really just says it all about what you do and who you are. But let's see if this comes up. Tell me about this LinkedIn post. This was really nice.
Yeah.
Let me just read it real quick, okay? Because people are watching this on small, on their smartphones. Okay. I was a guest on Adam's POZcast, and I believe that his POZcast is literally the best in the business. Our conversation was funny, deep, serious, and enjoyable. Adam's skills as a host made all of this possible. I would love for him to be a famous broadcaster one day. No one is more deserving. And it went on like, how this person earned 60,000 followers, I guess, on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's my man, Jonathan Tester right there. This dude puts out some of the most raw, real, straight talk content out there on LinkedIn. I had him on my show a couple of months ago, and it was a live show like this. So it was my live show is a little bit more minimal prep, only as far as like my proper format, but there was a lot more just open dialogue and banter. And we just went back and forth. We got deep, we got funny, we got philosophical, and it was just an amazing conversation. And he wrote this review that just hit so close to home for me. And I said, you know what, like, it's okay to promote yourself. There's a fine line, Mitch, like between self-promotion and humble bragging, right? And I see everyone out there that has a problem with this. And I said, you know what? I need to promote my show. And the best way to do it is by putting someone else's words talking about my show out there.
That's a great point, and getting a lot of value here. So I really appreciate this. By the way, folks, keep those questions coming. We're going to be checking on those in a couple of seconds. If I want to start a podcast, it's like a very popular thing these days. Is a podcast. Everybody's starting a podcast, and some of the new people I see coming into it are like, wow, they're doing a great job of it already. What advice do you give to a newly aspiring podcaster?
Right. I think it comes down to preparation, something we spoke about before, right? And you don't have to have a fully scripted show. The early days of my show, right, they were much more scripted as far as like the exact questions I was going to ask, because I was still learning how to be a host. But what that did was, as time goes on, I went from fully, fleshed out questions. So now I just have bullet points. And the reason I have bullet points is twofold. One, I want to make sure that I hit on every point that I want to get to with my guests throughout my show. Second of all, I want to make sure that my show has an arc and a story and a flow to it, right? Because I want to take my listeners on a journey. I don't want it to be all over the place. I want it to be a logical progression of questions that I'm providing value. I'm telling that person's story, and then I'm bringing it home at the end to really tie it all together. And if you listen to any of my shows, they all have the same format, a little bit different here and there, but it takes a user and the listener on a journey.
Right, that's exactly what I do. I used to try to script everything out, and it's too hard. It's not a natural flow. And now it's bullet points, and it creates what I call open, honest, raw conversation.
Okay.
All right. So I want to do my favorite thing now. It's the lightning round.
Let's do it, man.
Let's get this. The rules are this.
I'm gonna switch my mic into my handheld stand-up comedian position for this one.
Adam has no idea what I'm going to ask him, what I'm going to say, and his job right now is to just give his quick gut reaction because we're going to go through this quickly. Hence the lightning round. Okay, I'm going to say a couple of words.
You have theme music? No.
Darn, I should have music for this, shouldn't I? I'm going to have to update my format. Format, that's important. That's what we're talking about. You have to have a format for your show. It's got to be an order of things. People who watch a show should know what to expect. Okay, so here it is: a word or a phrase or a question. Quick answer. First word: influencer.
You can't call yourself one.
I love that. So overused, isn't it? It's like, wow, you have like 400 followers on LinkedIn, and now you're an influencer.
There's a difference between being influential and being an influencer.
Correct. I'd rather be a thought leader who has influence. Okay. The jobs market.
It's tough out there.
Okay. The Joe Rogan experience.
The man is showing us that you could do this and get paid.
$100 million deal from Spotify. I mean, that's getting paid. Okay.
Pension paying for ears and eyeballs.
Your favorite podcast besides the POZcast?
I'll be honest. Big fan of Jordan Paris. He's an old soul who has a really unique style of interviewing, and he's just smart as hell, man. Kudos to Jordan.
Okay. For daily vlogging, can anybody ever replace Casey Neistat?
Yeah, I mean, him and Gary Vee go head to head, man. The Daily V, that was good stuff.
That was great stuff. All right. Favorite 3 connections on LinkedIn?
I'm going to say Joe Gill. I'm going to say Sean Hervey. And let me throw a curveball out there. I'm going to say Mitch Goldberg.
Yo, you got it. All right. I made it to top 3. Okay, that was a good hint. All right, we've covered a lot of ground here. I want to thank you so much for your time. Everybody, you see the scroll going on the bottom of the screen, but how could people reach out to you?
Absolutely. I'm always on LinkedIn, Adam J. Posner. You'll find me there. For more on the show, www.thepozcast.com, and all things recruiting, nhptalentgroup.com.
All right, buddy. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to end the broadcast right now, and I hope to see you in person pretty soon. Okay.
Absolutely. One quick question: what's the deal with Kodak? Where did this come from?
Mother of mercy. Kodak is not this is not the Eastman Kodak of yesteryear that we grew up with, like the blue chip company with the Eastman family, basically paying for everything in Rochester, New York. This is nothing like that. This is a tiny micro cap company that got supposedly or is getting a $760 million, I think, a guaranteed loan from the U.S. government to manufacture compounds and chemicals for pharmaceutical products. We import from China. So if that cuts off, how are we going to make our drugs here?
Too shady.
So, but the issue is the CEO bought like 46,000 shares just a couple of days before the announcement, and the stock started going up, and the options market started flying well before, a couple of days before the announcement actually came out. So this whole thing is kind of strange. It's become the new favorite stock on Robinhood. And again, I have nothing against Robinhood. Enjoy. Just make sure it's a learning experience, not a gambling experience.
No.
So that's what it is. It's not my thing, but if somebody out there is having fun, more power to him.
I agree, man. Mitch, thanks so much for having me on.
All right. Take care, buddy. Thank you.